The blinding glow of stadium spotlights has a strange way of masking reality, transforming a human being into a larger-than-life figure who seems entirely immune to the vulnerabilities of ordinary life. For years, massive musical arenas around the globe have served as modern amphitheaters where tens of thousands of people gather to witness these spectacles of pure energy, charisma, and flawless performance. The sheer scale of a stadium concert is designed to overwhelm the senses, with booming bass lines vibrating through the concrete floors, elaborate synchronized light shows painting the night sky, and a collective roar from the crowd that can be heard miles away. Inside this controlled chaos, the artist at the center of the stage becomes the focal point of an entire universe, carrying the heavy weight of expectation on their shoulders while maintaining an illusion of effortless perfection. Fans buy tickets months or even years in advance, counting down the days until they can stand in the same room as their idol, expecting a flawless execution of the songs that have become the soundtracks to their own lives. It is a demanding, high-stakes environment where performers routinely push their physical and mental boundaries to deliver an unforgettable experience, often working through exhaustion, intense heat, and minor physical ailments without ever letting the audience see the cracks in the facade. This unspoken agreement between the performer and the public usually holds strong, creating a seamless evening of entertainment where the human element is overshadowed by the sheer grandeur of the pop star persona. Before we dive deeper into the unexpected events that unfolded beneath these dazzling lights and explore how quickly a night of celebration can turn into a moment of pure panic, make sure to take a brief moment to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an exclusive, in-depth look into the stories shaping the world of music and entertainment. The atmosphere inside a historic venue like London's iconic Wembley Stadium is particularly electric, steeped in decades of legendary musical history that elevates every single performance to monumental proportions. Walking into that massive space, one is immediately struck by the sheer wall of sound generated by an audience of up to 90,000 passionate individuals, all dressed in vibrant colors, wearing elaborate outfits, and singing along to every lyric before the main act even sets foot on the stage. The collective anticipation builds an immense pressure in the air, a palpable tension that grows with every tick of the clock as the sun slowly sets, and the stage crew makes their final adjustments to the instruments and microphones. For any artist, headlining a multi-night run at a venue of this historic caliber is the absolute pinnacle of a career, a definitive validation of global success that demands nothing less than absolute peak physical conditioning, emotional presence, and vocal precision. The energy required to command such a massive space for over 2 hours is comparable to that of an elite athlete requiring constant movement, dancing, sprinting down long stage catwalks, and maintaining perfect breath control while delivering powerful vocal performances. To the casual observer, the entire operation looks like a perfectly oiled machine, a spectacular display of showmanship where every movement is choreographed, every lighting cue is timed to the millisecond, and every interaction with the crowd is planned for maximum emotional impact. Yet, beneath the glamour and the deafening cheers lies a harsh physical reality that the audience rarely considers: the intense heat generated by thousands of heavy stage lights. The suffocating humidity of a closed or semi-enclosed stadium packed with tens of thousands of warm bodies, and the relentless stamina required to keep the momentum going song after song. Musicians frequently perform under conditions that would cause an average person to falter, fighting through dehydration and muscle fatigue while keeping a bright smile plastered across their faces to ensure the illusion remains unbroken for the paying crowd. On this particular Friday evening in late June, the environment inside the historic London venue was even more challenging than usual, as a rare and oppressive meteorological phenomenon had settled over the entire region, turning the massive concrete bowl into a literal furnace. The air was thick, heavy, and completely stagnant, lacking even a hint of an evening breeze to cool down the performer who was giving everything they had on the elevated platform. As the concert progressed into its later acts, the transition between upbeat anthems and intimate ballads began to take on a noticeably different tone, though few in the audience realized the subtle shift that was beginning to occur right before their very eyes. From the high upper tiers of the stadium, the figure on stage still looked energetic, moving gracefully from one side of the platform to the other, interacting with fans in the front rows, and delivering the charismatic performance that had become a global trademark. But closer to the stage, dynamic changes were happening that caught the attention of the most observant onlookers, hints that the grueling physical toll of the evening was starting to catch up with the beloved global icon. In the brief, dark interludes between songs when the music faded and the lights dimmed to a soft blue or purple hue, a different story was playing out, away from the grand narrative of the pop spectacle. The artist could be seen taking frequent pauses, reaching for hydration, and leaning heavily against the microphone stand in a way that seemed slightly less like a calculated rock star pose and more like a genuine need for physical support. These momentary pauses were fleeting, lasting only a few seconds before the lights came back up and the next high-energy track began, pulling both the performer and the audience back into the hypnotic rhythm of the show. The crowd, swept up in the euphoria of the moment, continued to cheer, wave their hands, and chant their idol's name, their voices merging into a deafening symphony that echoed off the massive stadium arches. Completely unaware of the quiet struggle happening just a few feet away from them. It is within these hypercharged environments that the line between theatrical performance and genuine human distress becomes incredibly blurred, making it almost impossible for an audience to distinguish between a planned dramatic pause and a sudden, terrifying medical emergency. The sheer momentum of a stadium show carries everyone forward, creating a collective tunnel vision where the show must go on at all costs, and where signs of physical exhaustion are easily dismissed as part of the rock and roll aesthetic. This sets a dangerous stage where an artist can find themselves completely isolated in plain sight of 90,000 adoring fans, trapped by the very expectations they worked so hard to build. Waiting for a single unpredictable moment to break the spell, the illusion of invincibility that surrounds a global pop icon can shatter in a matter of seconds, transforming a stadium filled with joy into an arena of sudden quiet dread. As Harry Styles pressed forward into the latter half of his June 26 performance at London's iconic Wembley Stadium, the atmospheric conditions inside the venue reached a boiling point that no amount of star power could conquer. The United Kingdom was gripped by an unyielding, historic heatwave that had driven ambient temperatures outside the stadium to a scorching 97 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the massive concrete bowl, packed to maximum capacity with 90,000 shouting, dancing individuals, the ambient temperature on the actual performance deck was undeniably much higher, exacerbated by the relentless thermal radiation of hundreds of high-powered theatrical spotlights. It was under this intense environmental pressure that the carefully choreographed evening took an alarming turn, captured in vivid detail by multiple fan cameras from various viewing angles across the arena. The videos, which quickly flooded social media platforms, show Harry reaching for a cup of water during a brief transition period between musical numbers, a routine action that every performer undertakes to maintain vocal clarity. However, as he took a drink, something went fundamentally wrong, and the casual observer was suddenly forced to witness a terrifyingly raw human moment. Instead of swallowing cleanly, the global star began to visibly choke, his posture stiffening almost instantly as his respiratory system fiercely rejected the fluid. Within moments, a violent coughing spell gripped his entire body, stripping away the polished stage persona and leaving a vulnerable young man struggling for breath in the absolute center of the world's most famous stage. The physical impact was immediate and severe, causing him to lose his footing entirely and fall directly onto the hard floor of the stage, hunched over in a desperate attempt to clear his airway. For roughly 20 agonizing seconds, time seemed to stand completely still for those close enough to see past the dazzling stage lighting, as the singer remained down on the ground, visibly shaken and physically compromised, while the massive stadium continued to reverberate with the sounds of 90,000 fans. The sheer contrast of the moment was haunting. While the individual on stage was experiencing a legitimate physical crisis, the vast majority of the audience, situated further back in the upper tiers, was entirely unaware of the severity of the situation. Due to the massive scale of Wembley Stadium, many fans initially assumed the fall was a dramatic piece of stagecraft, a playful gesture, or a planned transition into the next segment of the high-energy show. Because the stadium speakers were still echoing with ambient backing music and the natural, thunderous roar of the crowd chanting his name, the sound of his genuine physical struggle was completely drowned out. This created a deeply unsettling, surreal paradox where a human being was on his knees fighting to regain basic breath while surrounded by a massive, literal standing ovation from an adoring public that believed they were witnessing absolute showmanship. The viral footage captured from the lower barricades reveals a much more intense and frightening scene, showcasing the stark reality of the physical toll. It shows the precise moment Harry's face shifted from standard performance exhaustion to absolute distress, a visual that many fans later described across social media platforms as genuinely haunting and flat-out scary to witness in real time. Despite the clear physical shock to his system and the immediate drop in blood pressure that often accompanies such a severe sudden coughing fit under extreme heat, the professional instinct drilled into a performer of his caliber took over. After those long, uncertain 20 seconds on the stage floor, during which the small circle of security guards and stage managers off-camera undoubtedly held their breath, Harry managed to slowly push himself back up onto his feet. With remarkable resilience, he gathered his composure, picked up the microphone, and actively chose to continue the grueling concert, refusing to let the medical mishap bring a premature end to the night for his devoted followers. Yet, while the music resumed and the pop star persona was swiftly reestablished to finish out the set, the digital aftermath of those 20 seconds was just beginning to ignite a massive global conversation online. As soon as the final notes faded and the stadium lights turned back on, thousands of concertgoers logged onto social media to compare notes, share their recorded videos, and piece together exactly what had transpired on the Wembley stage. The initial relief that he had stood back up quickly gave way to a wave of profound concern, analytical speculation, and outright anger from a fan base that prides itself on fiercely protecting the well-being of their favorite artist. Many highly observant fans pointed out that the narrative of him simply choking on a misplaced sip of water did not fully explain the visible physical exhaustion that preceded and followed the incident. They began highlighting specific moments earlier in the evening where Harry could be seen frequently walking to the side of the stage, quietly spitting into a small cup between songs and looking noticeably pale under his vibrant, glittery stage attire. For these worried onlookers, this was not a simple case of aspirating water. It was the classic progressive onset of severe heat exhaustion or even heat stroke, brought on by performing high-intensity cardio for nearly 2 hours in 97-degree stagnant air. The online discourse rapidly intensified as fans began to openly question the safety protocols of major stadium tours, demanding to know why the production team or venue management had not intervened to protect the artist from his own relentless work ethic. The conversation took on an even more serious medical tone when members of the fan base reminded the community of a long-known fact regarding Harry's personal health history: his lifelong battle with asthma. This specific respiratory vulnerability added a layer of genuine terror to the analysis of the video footage, as an asthma flare-up combined with the sudden aspiration of fluid and oppressive ambient heat is a medical recipe for complete respiratory failure. Medical professionals and experienced runners within the fandom chimed in online, explaining that even the intense cardiovascular conditioning Harry undergoes, such as his well-documented routine of running marathons to prepare for the physical demands of touring, cannot completely cure or eliminate chronic asthma. They hypothesized that the extreme heat had already inflamed his airways throughout the night, making him highly susceptible to a sudden spasm the moment the water touched his throat, which likely triggered a rapid drop in blood pressure, severe lightheadedness, and his subsequent collapse to the ground. The imagery of the event began to weigh heavily on the hearts of millions of fans worldwide, with many expressing a deep, visceral hatred for how each newly uploaded camera angle seemed significantly worse and more heartbreaking than the last. The sudden vulnerability of an individual who is usually the epitome of joy and unshakable confidence left the global community feeling incredibly helpless, sparking a wider, philosophical debate about the nature of modern celebrity culture and stadium entertainment. Fans pointed out how tragic and deeply haunting it was to watch a young man actively struggling to draw oxygen into his lungs while an audience of 90,000 people seamlessly continued to chant his name, completely misinterpreting his physical suffering as part of the grand entertainment they had paid to see. This unsettling realization raised tough questions about the immense, invisible pressure placed on modern performers to maintain the show at all costs, even when their baseline physical safety is actively hanging in the balance. The terrifying 20 seconds at Wembley Stadium did more than just shock the 90,000 fans in attendance. They cast a glaring spotlight on the invisible, grueling physical reality of modern global touring. When an artist reaches the stratospheric level of success that Harry Styles enjoys, a concert is no longer just a musical performance, but a massive, multi-million-dollar corporate machinery that moves with an unstoppable momentum of its own. The pressure to deliver a flawless spectacle every single night can create an environment where the actual human being at the center of it feels compelled to override their own body's survival signals. For Harry, the journey from a teenage contestant on a television talent show to a singular generational stadium headliner has been defined by an absolute, relentless commitment to his craft and an unshakable work ethic. He has built a reputation over more than a decade for being an indestructible showman, an artist who dances, sprints, and engages with every corner of a stadium for hours on end without ever showing a single hint of fatigue. This incredible dedication is exactly why the sudden collapse on the London stage felt so deeply jarring and profoundly haunting to a global audience that had grown accustomed to his seemingly limitless energy. The incident served as a stark reminder that beneath the iconic custom-designed outfits, the glittering stage production, and the deafening adoration of millions, there is ultimately just a human heart and a pair of lungs subjected to extreme physical stress. In the days following that Friday night performance, as the viral videos continued to amass tens of millions of views across global social media platforms, the conversation evolved from immediate panic into a deeper analysis of the extreme conditions performers face. The severe heat wave that gripped the United Kingdom during that stretch of June was a major factor that simply could not be ignored, pushing public infrastructure and human endurance to their absolute limits. Performing a high-energy stadium set under a blazing 97-degree sky is a physical feat that requires the cardiovascular stamina of an elite endurance athlete, a standard that Harry actively trains for by incorporating long-distance marathon running into his strict tour preparation. Yet, as experienced medical professionals within the global fan community pointed out online, even the most rigorous athletic conditioning cannot alter fundamental human physiology or completely cure chronic, lifelong health conditions like asthma. When a person pushes their body to the limit in stagnant, highly humid air under intense theatrical lighting, the respiratory tract naturally becomes hyperreactive and heavily inflamed, making a sudden respiratory spasm incredibly likely. The moment the water hit his throat during that brief song transition, his already compromised airway suffered a severe reactive episode, triggering a massive coughing fit that instantly restricted his oxygen intake and likely caused a rapid, dangerous drop in blood pressure. To watch a beloved artist hit the stage floor under those specific circumstances was a deeply sobering moment for millions, illustrating how quickly an underlying medical vulnerability can surface when external environmental factors turn hostile. The emotional fallout within the global fan base highlighted a fascinating and complex dynamic that exists between modern pop icons and the communities that support them. Unlike the distant, untouchable rock stars of previous generations, contemporary artists share a deeply intimate, empathetic bond with their audience built on a foundation of mutual care, respect, and shared vulnerability. This unique relationship is precisely why the sight of Harry struggling for breath while surrounded by a thunderous, unaware standing ovation resonated so painfully with his followers. The collective feeling of helplessness expressed by fans online revealed a deep-seated desire to protect a person who has spent years providing a safe, joyful haven for others through his art and his inclusive message. The viral comments expressing a visceral heartache and a strong wish to step in and offer comfort were not just standard reactions to a celebrity mishap. They were genuine expressions of empathy for a young man caught in a moment of extreme physical isolation. It sparked a vital, overdue dialogue about the heavy expectations placed on artists to prioritize the continuity of a show over their immediate personal health, raising critical questions about why security or medical personnel did not immediately intervene to assess his condition. The fact that Harry chose to stand back up, compose his breathing, and finish the demanding set is a true testament to his profound professionalism and his deep respect for the 90,000 people who had gathered to see him. He has always operated under the golden rule that the audience deserve the absolute best version of the show, regardless of the behind-the-scenes struggles or physical tolls required to make it happen. This fierce loyalty to his fans is what drives him to push through exhaustion, but it also highlights the delicate balance that must be maintained to ensure long-term health and career longevity in an increasingly demanding industry. The Wembley incident will undoubtedly go down in the history of his historic tour as a moment of high tension, but more importantly, it stands as a clear turning point for how the industry views performer safety in the face of changing global weather patterns and extreme environmental events. As live music tours grow larger, stages expand, and stadium shows become more physically demanding than ever before, the safety protocols governing these massive events must adapt to protect the human beings beneath the spotlights. The incredible resilience Harry displayed that evening only solidified his status as a legendary performer, but it also reminded the world that the true magic of a live performance lies in the raw, shared humanity between the artist on stage and the audience cheering in the dark. As the music faded and the massive stadium eventually emptied out into the warm London night, the lingering echo of that evening was not just the catchy anthems or the spectacular light shows, but a renewed, profound appreciation for the immense physical and emotional sacrifice that goes into creating these unforgettable moments of global pop culture.